Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Textbox Virtual Coffee Morning number 9. I hope you're all having a marvellous sunny day today. We've got some really interesting things coming up today, and we're going to have some really interesting conversations. As always, please add any questions into the chat panel on the right as we go along, and I will try to ensure that we cover them off and we have some conversations. That's pretty much it from me in terms of our sort of virtual announcements. There's not going to be a fire alarm as far as I'm aware. So I'm going to kick off straight away, and I'm going to ask my fellow panelist here, Rich Keefe, to introduce himself and tell us a bit about his background.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, everyone. And thanks for having me. So my background. Well, if we go all the way back, I came to Bristol. I came to Bristol a long time ago. I went to university here, so I went to UWE here. I met my wife here, and after I'd done some travelling, I settled in Bristol. I was originally a journalist, local papers around here. I moved to publishing. I worked at Future Publishing for a long time, through most of all of the 2000s, all of the noughties. And always had a focus on video games and technology, and they were the times of digital transformation. So we were moving from magazines into the digital era, and it was about building brands. In 2013, I moved to YouTube had become such a big thing at that time, and a lot of the brands I was working with, we were trying to move them onto YouTube, and so I left Future. I joined a YouTube network called the Yogscast, based in Bristol, and where I was the general manager and the chief revenue officer. And the job there was very much about transforming their revenue streams from being just reliant on advertising to diversifying revenue streams, because that's such an enormous community and lots of different channels. And a lot of that was around branded content and about working with brands, about getting their messages onto video and working closely with the creators. And although that was only 7 years ago, we were certainly in games. We were often the first people who had ever been in the room talking to clients about that kind of stuff. This was before Instagram had made the whole influencer thing the sort of commercial juggernaut it is now. But what we saw with the rise of Instagram and the move, the ecosystem move, there used to be the sort of creator ecosystem, what now we call the influencer ecosystem, was built around MCNs in the early YouTube era, so multi-channel networks. We used to work with one of them called Maker that was bought by Disney. As that broke down, and a lot of that was because of Instagram and because of a democratization of not having to be in these massive monolith networks. It was agencies filled that space. Agency filled the space of setting up commercial deals for brands with creators, and we were working with them as the Yogscast and on behalf of the Yogscast network of channels. And what I found was that we found a really hard time finding any agencies that we liked working with, and a lot of that was because, well, a lot of it was because they didn't come at it from a creator point of view of understanding the creators. And when you're creating commercial content with creators, it's very different to advertising. It's not advertising. It is marketing, but it's not advertising. And a lot of agencies were not educating the brands about the best way to do this. And from our point of view, we felt that a lot of them were just trying to maximize their cut and trying to make as much money themselves out of what felt like a gold rush moment. So in 2017, I set up Fourth Floor, which is the specialist influencer marketing agency I run. I set up Fourth Floor essentially to address that. And our focus, the vision that we have, the core of what we do, is about creating value for all sides in that commercial activity. So the brand, the client, the creator, and the audience as well, because a lot of people forget about that side. Like I say, this isn't advertising; it is content marketing, and it is about creating amazing content that people will want to engage with, that then tells the brand story, right? And so to do that, you have to take the audience with you. Fourth floor, so we've been going for only just over 2.5 years or so, and we've grown pretty well in that time into branded content space, and we do a lot more than that now. We're essentially a 360 solution for our clients around helping them with their influencer marketing strategies, and then being able to push that into whether it's paid promotions with creators, advocacy campaigns. We have in-house productions. We make a lot of content for people. We have an events team. Live events are obviously not happening right now, but we're doing some virtual events for people. And we also create content for and manage social channels, mostly YouTube and Twitch. And we also have a direct consumer element as well. So we run, we create merchandise and run online stores for both creators and clients. And most of what we do is still in the video game market.
Cool. And I think I know this, that you're being very British about all of this. Do you want to talk a bit about the scale of Yogscast and the fourth floor? Because the scale of the reach and the growth and the number of people is phenomenal, really.
Yeah, well, Yogscast, obviously we're completely separate businesses. We still work, work a lot with Yogscast and support them and all their commercial activity. But how we work generally is we don't sign up creators. We work non-exclusively with people, and we find whoever the right partners are, and build those relationships between client and creator. But in terms of size, yeah, I mean, Yogscast was the first big YouTube channel in the UK. It was the UK's biggest YouTube channel for its main, what Yogscast calls the main channel, which is now the Lewis and Simon Yogscast channel. It was the first one to hit 1 billion views. It still has over 7 million subscribers to it, and the whole Yogscast network has over 25 million subscribers, reaches over 20 million people every month across YouTube and Twitch and social. In terms of what we're doing, we work with a lot of clients. We're working on anything up to about 100 campaigns at any one time. And we've worked with over 900 creators in the 2.5 years and delivered, I can't remember what the number is, it's somewhere close to 100 million views for our clients.
Yeah, so sort of some big numbers there. So thinking about fourth floor and where it came from, and I guess to some degree you've touched on this. Was it something that was always in the back of your mind? Was there always not a business plan as such, but an idea of doing that, or was it as the problem became more and more apparent, you thought, well, do you know what, I could do this better?
Well, a bit of both, I guess. So I've always had that urge to run things. My career future was running brands, as running the P&L, running brands, building those brands. I did, during my time at Future, I did leave and go back. And I left and ran my own company for about 1.5 years, which while profitable was not successful enough. But certainly that urge to run your own thing has always been pretty deep in me. But within Yogscast, I was one of the people helping to run Yogscast, although I didn't have any ownership of it. So part of it was for Floor, we saw there was a clear opportunity, a clear problem that needed solving, but there's also a personal opportunity to be able to run my own ship.
Cool. Yeah, it's surprising how often we hear when we're talking to founders how much it is that piece of wanting to take responsibility for themselves and wanting to drive something themselves. It's rarely just about, I want to go and make some money. Although, having some
It's definitely not about that. It's wanting to run something. You know, we're really focused as a company. We're just over 30 people now, and we're most in Bristol. Although obviously we're all remote, but we have we've got an office in Bordeaux, which is, I just recently realised and found out is actually a twin city of Bristol. That was not planned, but so we have an office in Bordeaux and a French standalone subsidiary in France, for France, and we have an office in Toronto as well. And a big part of our vision is how we spread out around the world. But yeah, what we're focused on as a team is about building a great enduring company. It's not about money. That's not how we think about success.
Yeah, and for anyone in the audience that doesn't know about influencer marketing and how that sort of, I guess, a pivot to all marketing has happened. Give us a 30-second elevator pitch. What is it?
Well, in some ways, it's always been with us, in the sense that content marketing has been here forever, from soap operas, and the original commercials were essentially original TV commercials were essentially content marketing, and all great advertising is content marketing that fits well on its platform, that isn't interrupting, that feels like part of it. One of the reasons magazines worked well was because the adverts fitted well within the content, because they felt part of the content. So in one part it is content marketing, which has always been with us, and the other part it is advocacy, which again has always been, celebrity advocacy has always been with us, in terms of putting products by people that are trusted by an audience for other reasons, and that's generally been around celebrity. What the rise of the social platforms has meant, that, and the democratization of all of that has meant, that there's just an incredible amount of people with audience, that the ability to make content and find audience has been opened up by YouTube, by Instagram, by Twitch, by all the Twitter, by all the various platforms. And so you can work with people who have defined audiences in order to talk about your brand with them. And there's the thing is that influencer marketing has become a phrase, but it means lots of different things to lots of different people, and has become almost too unwieldy to be able to make sense of it as one thing. So you can be very critical of influencer marketing and influencers, but you may well just be talking about a very thin slice of what happens on Instagram of good-looking people showing products they're not very interested in to their followers in order to make some money, when really what we're talking about is a massive and growing way to market products that fits well within the ecosystem of marketing, whether that's more traditional advertising through to PR and content on the other side. It fits within that mix.
And I guess in terms of it's exactly the same as content marketing in general, in that the most compelling content is about people who are being authentic and authentically care about a product or authentically think it's a good thing. The people that are just selling diet pills that they're not actually taking, it's not compelling content, and it's not the type of thing that works in the long run.
No, and it's bad for everyone, and that's quite rightly the bit that gets criticised, and market forces should see that not happen, because people only do that because it will lead to some sales of your product. So the point at which that doesn't happen, people will stop doing it. But the vast majority of what's happening is yes, it's about, and certainly what we do, is about building relationships between the brand and the creator. And sometimes that is a one-off relationship, and sometimes that's a much longer partnership that you build, where they can become much more entwined with the brand, and the authenticity is there. But it always has to have at its base a partnership that means something, and sometimes that is just about enabling amazing content. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to love this. I have to love this brand and always have loved it. That isn't necessarily the heart of authenticity. Sometimes it's just something along the lines of a brand can enable some amazing content on your platform, and your audience will be massively receptive to that because you've been able to do something you wouldn't have been able to do without them. And therefore, there'll be much more understanding of the brand messaging that will come through along with it. And that's where it can really work, and you can find real magic. But a lot of it comes down to very straightforward marketing things of understand the audience, understand what they want, and understand what it is that how that product can fit into their lives, their product or their brand. And that's more than just posts on, it's more than just videos on YouTube or posts on Instagram. It's about entwining it in much deeper ways than that.
It's a much more holistic piece then.
Yeah, but like I say, it can just be one-off things, but it's about thinking about the creativity of it and what the outcome is going to look like. You come back to that idea of creating value for all sides and making sure that that the audience is getting something of real value out of it, because that's when it works. Otherwise, there's just no point doing it.
And it feels like you've hit a mix of a good time in that this market, and not market, but I guess the approach to the market had reached its time, and you had already, and your colleagues had already built a significant network and understanding of that, and that's meant that you've been able to grow quite significantly and built something out that's special. Has that journey has it all been easy along the way? Has that been sort of flowed naturally, or is that just that's what it looks like externally?
I think the fourth floor part of it, so the last 2.5 years, has in many ways it has flowed very, very easily and smoothly. But that is in tandem with with an awful lot of hard work and an awful lot of hard work from everyone. We've been going flat out at it to try and build something worthwhile. But the hard work is the fact of my 20 years or so in working around video games and with people in the video games industry. So having those contacts and having those relationships, and then the last 10 years, 7 years specifically with content creators, but 10 years of thinking about this kind of stuff, about how that content works and what's the best way to tell those stories. So it's one of those, it looks like it's just been very quick over the last couple of years, but there's 20 odd years of experience boiled down into that. And like I say, just a huge amount of work from the team. It can't be underestimated how much work has been done by everyone else that isn't me.
I'm sure you've done lots of work as well. I've had some emails from you late at night and early in the morning.
Well, we do work across lots of different time zones, so some of my hours can be all over the place.
And in that piece around the team, how important do you think it is to build the right team and have certainly at a senior level or an early stage, have people on board who are aligned and work together with you?
Yeah, well, people is everything, right? Couldn't have done it with the right people. It's certainly not about me. And we've taken a lot of time to get that bit right and not just find the right people, but then have a structure in place, have a culture that is meaningful, that is purpose-led, that means that when people join, and we try and make sure we're finding the right people, when they join, there's something for them to be joined that has a purpose more than just working day in, day out for something. And there's certainly about more than the financial goals of the business. It's more about how can we map. We talk a lot about how can we map people's personal working and life goals with the goals of the business. And how can we align those things and get everyone on a path to the same thing, so we can work together towards it. And some of that is people being with us for the long journey, and some people will be here for a shorter journey while it aligns with them. And I mean, I was very lucky straight away. The first couple of employees, one was One was our now financial director, who was part of the Yogscast as well, and she still works across the Yogscast. So she's been there on that journey with me, and I already worked with her. And then was the first hire, which was a guy called Dave Bryan, who's now in Toronto. And that was in many ways luck. He reached out and found him, and it was just very obvious straight away that we had a great fit. And he has been an extraordinary addition to the business, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. And a lot of that was just blind luck. We didn't even have we had a very nascent culture at that point, because it was just him and me and some of Anna's time. But building on from there, we've spent a lot of time on people and culture, and about how we grow that, and how we make people feel part of the journey.
Yeah, and so I guess two things. It's surprising how much in all of these conversations about people founding and launching and growing businesses, we don't talk about how much of it is just down to luck, because there's absolutely an element of luck in all of this, and we shouldn't ignore it. And I guess the piece where you're talking about how you best align the goals of the organization and the team, that's quite a resource-intensive piece of work. And I know you've fairly recently taken on a COO, and is that all part of that process of, as you grow and scale and become a bigger organization, have your senior team specializing a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's been a theme over the last 12 months. So last 12 months we brought in 3 senior people in. So the first was Catherine, the COO, and she's the only one where we've actually gone through a formal recruitment process. And Oliver, who is here somewhere and said morning on the chat, Oliver Parker helped us do that. But we wouldn't have been able to work with Oliver or find Catherine if we hadn't had the culture in place, or the understanding of what we wanted to build as a business. And that meant that when Catherine, who had a lot of operations experience, not in games, not in marketing, not in certainly not in influencer marketing, she could come in and be a real game changer, which she has been. And then a couple of other senior positions as well. We brought in a product director and a creative director in the last 12 months. And being able to add those has meant that we've massively been able to step up our game.
Cool. And I guess on the flip side, I guess it's always useful to ask founders about the challenges of running the businesses, and if there are any particular challenges. And I wonder whether some of those hires have allowed you to sort of overcome some challenges, because I guess there is a challenge just with growth and scaling and being in all the right places at all the right times. Yeah,
and we're still a small company. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're still a small business. But yeah, having Catherine meant a huge amount of the operations side just got moved off of my plate, and I could think much more strategically and about growth. And the same thing with product and creative, just being able to take those elements away from me, but also the real benefit of it is all of those 3 people are much better at that thing than I am at it. So having people who are much smarter and better than me come in and run those bits is the thing that has made us be able to elevate the business much more than just giving me more time. But the outcome is I do have much more time to think about what the strategy is of the business and where we want to take it. We've just added, thinking of senior people, we've just taken a chairman on, a non-exec chairman, and that again has meant we can take another step in terms of elevation of what we're trying to do as a business.
And with that, the strategy piece and having a chair, do you think that does make a substantial difference to a business? I know there's lots of people we work with in organizations like Set Squared and Engine Shed who talk a lot about that sort of the governance piece and the taking a step back and thinking about the longer term strategy, because it's very easy to fall into the tactical rather than strategic, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's massively important, while not forgetting about the day to day and making sure all the tactics are happening. But having Robert as our chairman, who had run 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment, means that it's about perspective as much as anything, and about being able to lift your head and see what the horizon looks like, and having people of experience that have run other companies, who are there not just to give advice but a part of your journey, is massively valuable, in my experience. But like all of these things, senior people and non-senior people, non-execs, it's about finding the right people who really get what you want to do, and are on there to support you because they buy into the vision and they buy into where you want to go with it.
And how have you gone about doing that? Have you used headhunters? Have you used your network?
Outside of Catherine, who, like I say, was Oliver, who is part recruitment, part headhunter, more than both. Then it's either been through my network, or it's been through doing. Certainly for the senior people, it's been through my network. Yeah, I mean Robert ran Future Publishing when I was there, so that's where I know him from.
Cool. Joy has touched on this around time zones, but it'd be interesting to get your perspective on how you do operate internationally across, well, certainly across 2 continents, and how have you found that the cultures and the businesses that you're coming across, are they very different?
Well, we're so nascent in North America that it's headed up by Dave, who was here, so that fits pretty well. There's no one that knows the culture of the business more than Dave, so that bit's easy. In terms of the physical time zone bit, he's in Toronto. The time zone is not quite as harsh as it is on the West Coast, so it's easier. But yeah, it just means being able to time shift. And France obviously is only an hour difference, so we don't worry about the time shifting. There are some culture changes, but again, it's about people. So Leo, who's the MD of the French business, he spent a lot of time with us, and he's totally attuned and aligned with the culture of the wider 4th floor.
Yeah.
And I've worked, when specifically at another company I might mention before, we had when I was running those brands, I had teams in the US, and sometimes there was big cultural problems there that were about more than time zones. It was about how you communicate, and the fact that some words that seem like they mean the same thing mean very different things across the 2. So it's being mindful of that, and I have some experience with that. So
yeah, and I guess it wouldn't be a conversation without me talking about Corona. I suppose having an international team and managing people and businesses across different countries has sort of, in some senses, set you up in a way that's meant you're better for working from home and you can do things more remotely as a team.
Yeah, and I mean, generally, I feel quite guilty about saying it, but we have been incredibly lucky through the whole the pandemic, all the issues people are having around the pandemic. One, we were already well set up for remote working, and we had remote workers, so it was pretty straightforward to move to everyone working remotely. There are obviously a lot of issues for individual people around that need to be worked through. But as a structural point, we were set up for it. We also, the markets we work in are thriving rather than in trouble. So outside of the wider advertising crash that's happened. Within that, video has seen an enormous boom, and people need to find those audiences, and working through content, through creators, through content, is just a cost-effective way to do that, and a very effective way to do it. So a lot of people who haven't tried it because they've been spending their budgets on more traditional TV outdoor models have been coming into the market. But also the majority of our business is around video games. Video games play, as in the amount of people playing games is up about 75%. Viewership on platforms, YouTube and Twitch specifically, have gone through the roof. So we're incredibly lucky.
Yeah, and I guess it'll be interesting to see as we start to come out of that whether some of those things become semi-permanent and permanent. And certainly, it feels like businesses who are experiencing using video much more for the first time are probably likely to want to stay and do more of those things. So that's sort of what was probably a more gradual transition is likely to have been sped up significantly.
I think so. I think it's I don't think any of this will create new trends. It's just about accelerating things that were already happening. And I think people moving marketing budgets more towards content was definitely happening anyway, and it has been accelerated, and I don't think it will go backwards.
Cool. And I think, there's good and bad in there, isn't there, depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah, of course, and we're very lucky.
Well, some of it is luck, some of it is positioned in the right way. So I only have one more question for you, but if people in the audience want to ask questions, please do ask on the right, and we can ask some questions. So I ask this to everybody, because I do think the community here is a bit different, but I also like collecting these quotes so we can use them again. So what do you think makes the Bristol and Bath tech community different and stand out from other places?
I think Bristol has that. I'm sure you heard this a lot. Bristol has that unique ability to be both small and large at the same time. So, especially working in creative digital industry, that we have. There's a lot of people in those industries in Bristol, and therefore there's a lot of people to learn from and network with. But it's also small enough that you can build proper relationships. That's much harder to do in, for instance, in London, where you can go to a lot of events and not necessarily see the same people. And the thing that Bristol always has had, and the reason I'm here, is because the standard of living is so good, and it's just a great place to work and live and bring up families. And having those two things just makes it the perfect place to be.
Yeah, it's interesting that I'm sure there are entirely business reasons as well, but Bordeaux and Toronto are both places that, from a quality of life perspective, are quite similar. There's a lot of things in common with what's going on here,
and that is what it's about. It's about a people first policy and people being in the places they want to live in. And the business we work in, and I think everyone's realizing that it's almost an awful amount of businesses, a huge amount of businesses, sorry. It doesn't matter where you are in terms of your ability to do business. And which I think a lot of people are realizing now through coronavirus. And certainly for us, it's about people being where they want to be, and therefore their work will be better.
Cool. So Joy is keen to know what your predictions are for influencer marketing post-COVID.
Well, I'm not sure the COVID or post-COVID makes that much difference to my predictions, to be honest. I think we'll see continuing a continuing growth of it as a market, the continuing splinter out of what that means, and people understanding that the term influence marketing covers a huge area. I do think that we're ripe for, and you can feel it happening, and maybe COVID has delayed it rather than accelerated it, a reckoning around the Instagram product placement side of influencer marketing, that the clear inauthenticity of a lot of that activity, and frankly how quite a lot of it breaks regulations and in some cases the law, that there'll be a reckoning of that, and that won't be through legal or regulatory means. That will be through market means, through consumers just not being interested in it, and therefore people not pushing their money that way. But the broader scope is people working with creators as a way to build partnerships to create amazing content that audiences engage with, and the growth of that on those platforms will continue.
Cool. I read a really interesting article yesterday from Mary Portas, who does a lot of the high street stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying there's much more of an awareness now that every pound you spend is a vote for how you want the world to look and feel. And I think it feels like coming out of Corona and coming out of what people are doing at the moment is people are doing much more of that. Certainly within my social groups, everyone I talk to is much more focused on they want to spend money with brands and organizations that are having a positive impact, that are lots and lots, certainly with food, lots of where you can spend your money locally and support your communities and things like that. So I can absolutely see how connecting with the right content and doing that is going to be the future of how we're influenced to spend money. Yeah,
and I genuinely think this is the best way to tell those brand stories is by partnering with creators to do it. That's how that's how it's always worked. It's just though you were doing it through advertising models before, but those have moved towards interruption models, and the world has just changed. Ad blocking has changed everything.
Yeah.
And how that advertising model works, creating great content audiences want to engage with, that tell real stories about your brand. The brands that have authentic stories to tell are the ones that will do that better than ones that don't, because it doesn't really work very well if you're not telling a great story that way. And so the more people are looking for those personal connections with brands, then these are great ways for brands to be able to tell that story.
Cool. Thank you very much, Rich. That's really interesting. It's made me think a bit about how we should be talking about what we're doing and how we're marketing what we're doing as TechSpark, which I'm sure the people on the team that are on the call will be thrilled that I'm going to set us off on yet another direction.
Indeed. I mean, but a lot of what you do aligns with influencer marketing, and B2B influencer marketing is a big growth area as well. It's not something we do, but it is about understanding who's influential in that market and then building content around it. And a lot of that is what you do. You as a local influencer, you are a local influencer. So what you do is influencer marketing.
So a very, very hyper local, just to this pitch in.
It all counts.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for today, Rich. It was really helpful, really useful. For everybody that's on the call, we have the capacity for people to go to the networking zone now, which should be on the left of your screen. So please do go in there. For anyone that hasn't done it, it sets you up with a 4-minute face-to-face conversation with a random person. So it is like networking, but it's only 4 minutes and then it cuts you off. So please do go and do that. It's really interesting. People keep telling me it's great. I may well go and do it today. Next week, we will have another one of these coffee mornings, so please do sign up. And that's pretty much it from me. But thank you very much again to Rich. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Ben.